Hello, hello, and welcome to this week's conversation on the Low No Drinker podcast, bringing you closer to the people, places, and brands leading the low, no, and light alcohol revolution. Nearly 18 years sober, Laura Silverman's LinkedIn profile describes her as the nexus of NA, and she is most definitely all about connection. Despite being oceans apart, I had the pleasure of meeting Laura earlier last year whilst we were both on the non-alc judging circuit, and she was as lovely in person as she was when she first reached out the blue to say, let's meet up for a virtual coffee. And since then, I'm very pleased to list her as one of my friends in this space. She is the founder of Zero Proof Nation, a global coming together of low and no brands. And she's also the founder of Booze Free in DC, which is a digital hub of AF knowledge for her hometown. She's got about 16,000 other things that she does as well. And I finally found somebody who is busier than I am. And today we're going to talk about the passion that she has for non-alc beverages and why she's chosen to share that with the world in such a wonderful way. So thank you very much for joining me, Laura. Lovely to have you. How are you doing today?
Oh my gosh, Denise, what an intro. I am so warm and fuzzy inside. Thank you so much for having me. And I feel the exact same way about you. I think you are busier than me though, but I'm thrilled to be here because, I have Zero Proof Nation. You've got Low No Nation. We're separated by an ocean or a pond, as some say, but I feel like with the two of us, we are just, there's so many amazing people in this industry that I'm also blessed to call friends and have as friends. So we really are part of a movement now. And I know you just asked me how I'm doing. I went right in. I'm doing great. It's Friday, and I'm looking forward to a weekend. And I always remember Maggie Smith from Downton Abbey as the Dowager Countess. She would say, "What is a weekend?" Because she just every day was a weekend for her. It's become an inside joke with my parents. But yeah, I'm doing well and so excited to be here, Denise. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for joining me. It's been a long time in the coming, and I'm glad we're getting a chance to
Yes.
have a chat because you and I both have a passion for the non-alc drinks industry. And I like that we've come together, as you say, from different sides. We both have a nation that we're trying to reach, but it's not just our country. We're globalizing the term.
It's a greater nation of
absolutely
peoples who are interested in these drinks and this lifestyle. Yes, absolutely.
And I think it's great because between us, you and I, we come at things from a different angle. We have had a different journey to get to where we are, but we both have the same mission. And I think we're a really good example, not to toot our own horns, of how this world is full of such different people with different stories and different backgrounds, but we can come together and create something amazing. So for those in my audience who haven't yet had the pleasure of coming across the wonderful Laura Silverman and knowing your story, tell us what was the adventure that led you to where you are now with your amazing platforms?
I'm going to have to rewind a bit and then fast forward a bit because we don't have a ton of time and I'm basically zipping through over 20 years of what's in the making. But essentially, I got into some heavy drinking in college and I didn't drink at all in high school. As a matter of fact, I really had no interest in it. But I had some undiagnosed mental health things that were going on that I've talked about quite publicly on my own platform. So it's not that I'm embarrassed to say anything, but I had some undiagnosed things that I didn't realize at the time. But when I got to college, I was self-medicating. It was fun for a while though. I mean, I didn't immediately have a problem. And, I was a college student. I did all the things that the college kids did. But by the end of college, it had gotten progressively worse. And then after the two years after graduation, it got very, very bad where I got hospitalized for alcohol poisoning twice. By the ripe old age of 24. I mean, I just turned 24 with my second hospitalization. And I knew I couldn't continue drinking, quote unquote, safely. Now we have all this scientific evidence that there really isn't a truly safe amount. I mean, it is it is a drug, but there's so many other drugs out there that, sugar is addictive, and there's a lot of things. But essentially, I knew that I couldn't keep drinking alcohol in any kind of regulated manner. There was no sober curiosity or mindful drinking movement then. And there certainly weren't any non-alcoholic drinks that, even if I was interested, that I could latch onto as a potential lifeline. So I couldn't keep drinking, but I also, seeing sort of what I've just described, that there was no real landscape for any kind of alcohol-free or mindful drinking culture, I didn't really see a way that I could have fun without alcohol, because in 2007, it was saying, it being society, you drink to have fun, and if you don't drink, you're not fun. That's basically the landscape I was coming into. So it's been my mission, and I am very loud and proud about my sobriety. So I sought professional help in 2007. I knew enough about what I was going through that I had some things that I needed professional help with. I didn't want to think I was an alcoholic, and I don't think that. I don't subscribe to that kind of language. But I also didn't want to think in terms of forever, because that just felt like a life sentence, and that was just too much for me. I needed to clean things up, so to speak, for now, and for now kept extending and kept extending. And I enjoyed not having hangovers. I enjoyed just being able to have clear memories of what I did or didn't do, because in the beginning, I didn't do a lot of things to remember. I just nursed my early sobriety and hung out with my parents a lot. But more and more time passed, and I really enjoyed it. Sorry, you don't have to edit that out. This is pure Laura. I really enjoyed this newfound sense of clear-headedness and calm that I had. Of course, I was still really young, and I was still coming into myself. I was still growing up, So I found that I enjoyed not drinking alcohol, but I knew there was a clear gap in. I recognized it then, and I started to really recognize it as I was comfortable in my sobriety and was going out a lot more and wanted options when other people were drinking alcohol. But I noticed it even in the beginning. There just wasn't anything worth having. I drank a lot of Diet Coke, a lot of club soda and lime, and just a lot of, fountain drink, the fountain gun drinks. It just wasn't fun. And of course, even if you asked for, club soda with lime and a splash of cran, they would give it to you in some kiddie cup. So it's like immediately you're outed for not having, a quote unquote adult beverage. So all this is to say is that I've had a lot of years, a lot of time to rally in my own neighborhood, in my own state, but also beyond that for non-alcoholic options. Please don't think, anyone listening, that I'm like claiming to have started a movement. Absolutely not. But I do think that I'm one of the people who was there at the very beginning and has certainly helped to advance this movement, because you can't have a movement with one person or two people or three people. It has to really catch. So from 2007 till about 2017, I was just knocking on a lot of figurative doors, telling people I was sober so that, they wouldn't give me any alcohol by mistake. And, making a lot of just basic drinks at home, or, asking for basic stuff out in the world. At around 2017 is when I started to notice, or 2016 rather, when I started to notice that there were a handful of options. I think I first saw a bottle of Seedlip at an Anthropology, which I don't know if they have those in the UK, but it's like a big sort of fun clothing store that's like a concept store. It's very, and they've got like a lot of like, they have a beautiful plant section. And so the bottles of Anthropology, I haven't had coffee yet, everyone. The bottles of Seedlip at Anthropology would be like in the plant and botanical section, because it's sort of,
yeah.
is a botanical distillate, and the first non-alcoholic spirit that I think ever was. Thank you, Ben Branson, who I met last year. That was so exciting for me. I visited him in King's Crossing. And so there were a handful of beverages. I mean, this was back in the day. 2017, Athletic Brewing was still a craft beer brewery in Connecticut. No one really knew much about them. I mean, it was just the nascent time in our sort of alcohol-free womb, so to speak. Like we were still like getting ourselves together before the birth. But around 2019, and meanwhile, I had started an alternative sobriety blog called the Sobriety Collective, where I wanted to find people like me who were not into a 12-step kind of way of recovering. And that had been part of my early sobriety because it was the only thing that there was. But I found that I really early on into it, I wanted to just like graduate from that. I wanted to level up my life. I wanted to be social, and I didn't want to limit my life to just one tiny part of the world and one tiny community in the world. Although I guess it's not so tiny, but it felt very,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
It felt small. It felt small the longer I was in it. And for me, it served a wonderful purpose in the beginning of my journey. And then I was ready for more, but no one was talking about what was on the other side of 12-step. Okay. And so I started this community, this blog. It wasn't a program, and I never intended it on being one, but I wanted to find people who understood what it was like, who maybe had some kind of a story that brought them to being alcohol free or substance free. And I didn't want to limit any stories either. So I started connecting with people on Twitter when it was like a really fun community place to belong to, and the blogosphere and the early podcast sphere around like alternative sobriety and recovery. And that's when I first encountered Ruby Warrington. She hadn't written Sober Curious yet. She wrote a book called I think it was like Material Girl, Mystical World, or vice versa. But she talked a lot about being booze free or drinking less. And so I interviewed her. I interviewed Tawny Lara. I interviewed Chris Marshall. A lot of people in the States, sure, but also there were some folks on the other side of the world. I interviewed some people in Australia, and I wanted to interview people who were proud of their journeys and used their full names. I didn't want to hide behind any kind of cloak and dagger of anonymity. That wasn't my thing. And it laid the groundwork for what would become Zero Proof Nation, because in 2019, as a creative with ADHD, and after like 4 years of having this blog, I was ready for the next creative endeavor. Okay. And I was definitely by then noticing, okay, there's more than a handful of non-alcoholic beverages. The pandemic hadn't happened yet, so it wasn't like it was still early days. But I think I could count, maybe brands for two hands rather than one. And I was like, you know what? I think I didn't actively like put this into words, but I was like, I think I want to basically do what I did for the Sobriety Collective, but for the non-alcoholic beverage movement, or what was becoming one. Mm-hmm. And so I launched in fall of 2019, and aptly Ruby Warrington was my first feature. And she shared some of her favorite beverages, and it became a platform, and is a platform, to share stories of people in the space, beverages, brands, places, and still is. And it's expanded so much, but it's kind of hard to wrap all of that up in a tight little neat bow. It's entirely possible I would have come to the table of mindful drinking or sober curiosity, in my 30s, in my early 40s at some point, if that hadn't been my previous journey, because that's what a lot of my peer group is doing now. They're drinking less, and I love that. But I do fully believe that my story and my history led me to where I am today. And I'm so grateful that I could, as my aunt says, my Aunt Linda says, I turned my mess into my message. And
That's lovely.
and I think that's where I am right now.
Fantastic. Well, no, it's your life. It's very hard to condense your life story into just bullet points, isn't it? But and it all adds to where you are now, what you've chosen to do, and what drives you. So, I love, as we mentioned before, this is Zero Proof Nation. Your website, which we'll give everybody a link to, is an amazing resource. One of the first resources that I came across. But I was blown away by the fact that you did decide to go global with it.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? So, well, first of all, tell us what we can find on the website, what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this podcast has a big passion about drinks. And
Yes.
what was it that led you to put that the map that you have and so much emphasis on the global low and no drinking movement rather than just your neck of the woods? Because it's easy to do where you are. So
Yeah.
why go global?
Well, there's a couple of things to unpack there. And let me just start with a quick overview of what people can expect to find when they go to zeroproofnation.com. So, like I said before, or maybe I didn't actually say what it was when I was interviewing people in the beginning stages, but it started out as an Instagram feed and a super tiny beverage directory. There weren't that many categories, so it was just kind of like a few things like beers and wines and spirits. And I think that was about it. And there were still only a handful per category. And it then expanded to a very robust beverage directory. Of course, it's none of the things that I put out into the world are ever going to be fully comprehensive because there's constant innovation and it's so exciting to see. Constant innovation, constant opening up of places. It's just impossible to track as a human in real time, but we do our damnedest, don't we, Denise?
We do, but there's a lot.
So it started out as the Instagram where I was interviewing people in the space, like Ruby Warrington, like Chris Marshall, and beverage founders. In the very beginning stages, I had some beverage founders up my sleeve that I reached out to, really wondering why they started a non-alcoholic beverage company when at the time it was more profitable to go with alcohol. Mm-hmm. We've seen the tides turn. We're seeing the tides turn, but it was very unusual to see that. And so I wanted to hear their whys, and everyone had a different why. And there weren't any non-alcoholic bottle shops then to have like Meet the Makers series and to get to know the brands behind the shelves. And so that sort of leads me to the next thing that you can find on Zero Proof Nation, which is a directory of non-alcoholic bottle shops, which again did not exist when I started the platform. It's a direct byproduct of the pandemic and what came out of that. Mm-hmm. And that started out as just the States, or just like this one long scrolling thing that included everything. I think it was just the States. And then I realized it was such a long scrolling thing. I had to divide it into US and the world. And then I would do little flag emojis for where in the world. And then it was just too much to just keep scrolling because we know that there are so many bottle shops and bars. And I did the same thing for booze-free bars. When I started, it was Sands Bar in Austin, Texas, Listen Bar as a pop-up in New York City. And at the time, Redemption Bar in London was an alcohol-free bar. They've expanded to being a full ABV, low ABV, no ABV menu from the last I checked. But those were the three there. So not really a lot for a directory, but you got to start somewhere. And then those directories just kept expanding and expanding and expanding to the point where I said, what would this look like if we put all of these logos, because they were all logos that were clickable and directed people to the websites of whatever bottle shops or bars I had on there. What would it look like if these were pins on a map? I wanted to visualize it myself. I wanted to see what was out there. And I've been doing this exercise, spoiler alert, I'm working on a book proposal and I'll get to that later. Ooh. But in doing some of the writing exercises about why I wanted to do what I did, I realized that my upbringing as a diplomat's daughter, where I grew up all over the world, really informed a lot of how I think about the world and how I see that there's obviously so much beyond just my borders. And I don't even mean my country, but some people never leave the state that they live in. Some people never even live the county that they live in. And it's the same for any part of the world. There are people that just never leave where they're from, and that's okay. But I knew from my upbringing that there was a bigger world out there, and I'm interested in cultures. I'm interested in languages and cuisines, in what makes people tick of all walks of life. And so I lived in Latin America, Peru, Nicaragua, and El Salvador. So I speak Spanish still somewhat fluently. I lived in the States for only 4 years, and then I lived in Egypt for 4 years. And so I realized, in hindsight, in retrospect, that the global map really was sort of a tip of the hat to my upbringing. I was always fascinated by maps and atlases and all of that. So it just kind of was a natural next step for me, not even realizing that it was. And that started, really for the first year of that map was all my own research, painstaking hours of just finding I went through terms and conditions for some of these websites to find like where their warehouse was based, like where the shipping regulations, like I wanted to differentiate this from any other type of Google map that I had seen, which just had a pin for a place, and it had the link to the website. But I wanted there to be information. So I have a website, I have an Instagram, and I have a blurb per shop, per bar, per whatever is on there that I would write. And then it got to be where I just needed to crowdsource this. I needed people to submit their own things. I needed people to submit their favorite places. But the other differentiating factor is that most Google Maps depend on physical locations to have any kind of pin in there, because again, you're pulling a Google profile, a Google business profile that has a physical location. And I wanted to sort of visualize in the best way that I could where the e-commerce bottle shops were, where the pop-ups and mobile mixologists were. So, you've got over on your side of the world, you've got Wise Bartender, who's quite the robust e-commerce platform. There's no physical shop that you can go to, not that I know of, but they definitely deserve to be on the map. So, I wanted to have categories that you wouldn't normally find on any kind of map, so that it put places physically on the map that had a geographic base, but not necessarily a physical location. And yeah, I think this year, certainly I'll reach 200,000 views. I'm at 176 or 177,000 right now. And it's been pretty organic. I'm a one-woman shop. Much like you, I know you have a team that contributes, and I've contributed a couple of articles over the years, but we still do a ton on our own. And yeah, we'll see what the next steps are. I definitely want it to be more real time. I don't want to build an app, because there are apps that I use that I love, like Better Without. Johnny Stevens built something amazing. I know he's not as involved in the app anymore, but he's quite the visionary too. And then there's BuzzCut, which is an American app that has a lot of great information too. So for me, it's always been about seeing the map on a bit of a larger screen, so to speak. And then what else can you find? I don't even know. Industry news. I forgot.
There's so much. And I think, you've got industry news, you've got books, there's podcasts, there's publications.
Oh yeah, directories of magazines. Yes, magazines and podcasts. And
thank you.
Directories of, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, I think you've done something humongous. It's amazing when you think that you did this all by yourself, because there's so much. There's so, when you started, it was quite easy. And now you're right, the explosion in online retailers, or e-commerce, physical shops, bars, the opening of them, the closing of them, the relocations of some of them.
Yes.
and the new producers, every week there is new products coming out, which is fantastic, but it's a lot to it can be quite overwhelming.
Yes.
Looking at it
Yes.
all. And I
So
think the map is fantastic, because people often ask me, one question I get from people a lot is, how do I continue to drink low and no, or continue to be sober curious, or mindful when I'm on holiday? And it's really good for me to be able to send them to a resource that says, well, actually, you can have a look at this map, and it can show you places that you could go to that have venues nearby that can facilitate the way you want to holiday or vacation, as you would
absolutely.
say.
In combination with Better Without, I think we touch a lot of the things, because I know that Better Without started out really as like a hospitality finder. I think that's what, please forgive me, Johnny, if you ever hear this. I think it was where you can find brands that were on menus and places, and that's something that is very difficult to track if you don't have some kind of like API that talks to every single brand store finders. And so that's another differentiating factor. I was like, well, Johnny does this so well, and there are other apps that are doing that so well. What can I do a little differently that plays nicely with others, that plays well and complements those apps that exist? So I think there are multiple tools people can use when they're on vacation, or when they're in their hometown, or when they just move somewhere, or if they have a friend who's like, well, I'm visiting and I don't drink, what can you have for me, or where can we go? So especially with the shops, but the booze-free bar and the booze-free pop-up bar concept, I mean, that is huge right now as well. And big props to Millie Gooch on your side of the pond. I love Sober Girl Society. I love everything that she's built. One of my dreams is still to go to a Sober Girl Society event, but that's another pop-up thing that is very robust. And if there wasn't a category for pop-ups or mobile mixologists, how might someone who is not a Londoner like find that out? So that's another one of my motivations behind some categories that might not normally get typical map love.
It's amazing. It really is. Let's talk a little bit about, you've been doing this for a while. You've been, you said beforehand that you're not claiming that you started a movement, but you've most certainly been integral in the help to grow it. So you've seen a lot. I know that we've spoken before, and you have given me a digital tour of the vast amount of drinks that you have in your abode that people have sent you. So you tasted a lot, and obviously we met on the judging circuit. So you've tasted, your opinion is considered when it comes to these drinks. What have you seen in terms of the development over the last few years that excites you in the low-no space? And conversely, what have you seen that you think we need to work a little bit harder on?
Such a great question. And when I reflect, I'm often seen as a cheerleader of the movement, and I am. And I also have taste buds, and not everything. I don't love everything, but I do love a lot. And I certainly like even more. So there's a lot of improvement that I've seen for sure, not just within liquids themselves, but within expansion of categories and subcategories. And I think we're at the stage now where you get top shelf, mid-range and rail type beverages in the non-alc space. You're getting a wider range of quality, and a wider range of price points too, for people who can afford to splurge on a big, beautiful bottle of something. And then for people who want to keep it lower cost doesn't always mean lower quality, but sometimes it can mean that. So I think what I've seen, I mean, there's just been so much innovation, and it's hard to even quantify, because again, like I'm sure I wasn't aware of every single brand that existed back in 2019, but I was only aware of like 10. And now I think there's in the thousands. There certainly are, if not in the thousands, then approaching there. But yeah, I'm loving brands like Muri. I think there are a lot of like interesting tea beverages that are out there that are quite fascinating and good as like wine alternatives. I think we've seen a lot of innovation in wine, non-alcoholic wine over the years, and it's easier to do. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier to do a sparkling wine well, because um, the bubbles can often enhance what some, it's always good to me, but what some might not appreciate about a non-alcoholic wine. And what bubbles can do, it brings that liquid to life. It gives it some effervescence. So when it comes to still wines, like still whites, rosés, and reds especially, it's been harder for people to get those right. And I think that they're really starting to nail still wines, and there are a lot of brands out there that are I think ahead of the curve in that respect. Geronimo is doing a fantastic job with their wines, and they've got out of Austria, and they've got some like higher price points and some mid price points. There's a great wine that I just tasted out of California called Tomorrow Cellars. Ooh. And they have a Rhone Blanc. The grapes are like Marsanne grapes, so they're originally like French grapes. And I never tasted anything like that before. And what I enjoyed was that there was like a little bit of a lift to it, even though it wasn't sparkling, it was still, but it had almost like a wink of effervescence. And I quite enjoyed that. I'm a huge beer fan. I absolutely love craft NA beer. And I think it's certainly having a heyday right now. But I mean, the biggest thing that is just like exploding everywhere is functional beverages and quote plant-based THC beverages. And I mean, I don't know if it's like that in the UK, but it's just like exploding in the States with functional, both like adaptogens, mushrooms, nootropics, all of that. And then there's a lot of like low dose and then maybe higher dose THC beverages. So those are certainly exploding right now. I like prebiotic sodas. I think they're a fun sort of soda alternative, and there's a lot of those that are I mean, there's just tons.
And I think the functional stuff is growing over here as well. We don't get the THC stuff, so over here in the UK, it's still a no for THC. Okay. But we are getting some of the CBD.
Yes.
Drinks
Okay.
are getting more popular over here, but they're not as well understood in the UK because the way that our laws are around it haven't relaxed as much as many states in the US.
Yeah.
So it's become more, there's more education about it on your side. So I'm really intrigued to see how that's going to take over here and how it's going to pick up, because everyone's loving functional and there's a lot of questions and queries and growth, particularly with people who are looking for something that can give them a little bit extra, a little bit of a buzz, but without giving them any of that alcoholic consequences.
Right. So yeah. Well, you've got an interesting brand over there, Sencha Spirits. Yes. That is doing. I think I tasted a little bit. I'm told that I tasted a little bit in Wafa last year. Okay. But that's doing a whole different thing. That's quite interesting. And also, I see behind you, you've got Pathfinder, which is one of my favorites. Yeah. And can be considered a functional beverage as well. That's, I have favorite. Okay, I love I mean, I don't love everything. I love so much. Yeah. But I have a few favorites, and I would be totally remiss if I didn't like plug one of my own sort of products, collaborations that stems out of my just like fandom of this particular brand. But All the Bitter is an alcohol-free bitters company that is just absolutely fantastic. They started out doing sort of the classic cocktail bitters like Angostura and orange and Peychaud's and those kinds of things, but completely alcohol-free. Yeah. And then they branched out to do some more interesting limited edition flavors and limited edition sort of concepts. And then I became friends with the founders, Ian and Carly, in the very beginning of the pandemic. And over time, just being one of their biggest fans, because I absolutely love their product, share it with like everyone I could think of. I said, well, what if we did something together? And what if we did something that could potentially benefit the movement, especially the indie players? So we spent about a year conceptualizing, designing, tasting, and eventually launching the All the Bitter and Zero Proof Nation Cherry Coffee Blast decaf coffee, where it's only available at non-alcoholic bottle shops and on All the Bitters website. You won't find it in big box retail. You won't find it on Amazon. As a matter of fact, All the Bitter just took their products off of Amazon for a variety of reasons. And I certainly won't speak for them, but I think they were finding that for them, they weren't getting the greatest customer service there. And ultimately, they were just like, well, we're a non-alcoholic bottle shop now, because they opened up their own shop and tasting room in Chico, California. They said, well, let's practice what we preach. And they took their products off of Amazon. But so this particular SKU, this particular bitter, you can only find it at non-alcoholic bottle shops, and most of them at the independent producers. So it's a way to drive physical traffic into these shops.
That's wonderful.
And there's a QR code on the back to my map so that people can find a shop near them where they could if they already have the bottle, maybe they bought it off of All the Bitters website, and then they can find a shop near them.
Yeah. How do people enjoy it then? Tell me some amazing ways that you can use your
well, let me just keep it simple. Keep it simple, because I don't believe I am a mixologist, although I've created a couple of fun things.
It's hard to be a mixologist.
In my kitchen lab. It is hard. It's definitely harder than it appears. I like to keep it very simple, and I like a coffee tonic, or I like a coffee soda. So as easy as you want to make it, you can just put a liberal amount of the bitters in club soda or seltzer, or in tonic water. And I love using the Fever Tree Refreshingly Light tonic. I think it's just perfect that way. And I don't think you have to get super fancy, but of course you can do espresso martinis. You can do, it plays really well with Pathfinder. Any of the Amaros, it goes nicely in. And I think you can get a little creative and add like a splash of citrus as well. I recently had a cold brew shandy at a coffee shop, and it was like half cold brew, half lemonade. And I couldn't believe how good it was. I was like, this doesn't make sense. I'm just curious to try it. And it was fantastic. So I would say in that regard, to anyone who is listening and wants to play, experiment, put things together that might not seem to go together, you might find a masterpiece in it, but you also might find that it's like not servable to other humans. And that's the fun of it too. Like, just find something. It might work, it might not work, but there's a lot of, I think this whole movement sort of lends itself nicely to playfulness, community, experimentation. We're still in the beginning stages. It feels like, you've been doing this for a while too, Denise, and it feels like, wow, we have like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of brands. We've got so many places, we've got so many people, but we're still at the beginning. And I think there's still a lot out there that has yet to be discovered and is yet to be, there's another sort of element of hospitality that we're I think scratching the surface on, like cruise lines, airlines, hotels, mini bars. Like, there's still a lot to be done. So there's more work out there. And I don't mean like paid work, although I would love some paid work, but I mean just like the people's work of getting these beverages to the hands of the masses. So that's exciting, and there's definitely still more to do.
There is, there is. I'm conscious that I know I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I've got two more questions for you.
Yes,
The first
please.
and most important is we've spoken a lot about your site. I know you've mentioned it. You've also got another site, which is your Booze Free in DC. You've
Yeah,
got
it
a few
doesn't
other
get much
projects that you
love. It's
worked
quite
on.
neglected.
Well, why don't we rectify that? If you could tell Lono Nation where they can go to find out more about all the amazing things that you've been up to and how they can connect with you.
Sure. Well, if you ever find yourself wanting to visit Washington, D.C., and right now I don't know who would want that,
Hmm.
there I have cringe. I have this website that Denise mentioned called boozefreeindc.com, and it's really a hyper local travel guide for travelers and locals to explore the Washington, D.C. metro area, which includes parts of Virginia, parts of Maryland. I live in Maryland, from a non alcoholic perspective, from a wellness based perspective. And I actually did update the site yesterday, and I need to make a post about that because I added new bottle shops that have opened in the DC area, and I've added some other bars and places to buy NA products that didn't exist before. So it's great for finding places that serve NA on the menu. It's great for finding where you can buy locally non-alcoholic products. There's some other stuff. There's some interviews with folks that are local who are booze free or allies of the movement. And it's still a pretty accurate representation of what's out there, even though, truth be told, it's very due for some more updates. But there's a brand new booze-free gay bar that opened in DC, and I think it's the only one in the country right now to have a completely alcohol-free gay bar. It's called Spark Social. And we also have Binge Bar that's been around for a couple of years, some bottle shops. So it's a way for people to find what's in their backyard if they live here or if they're traveling for a conference or tourism. Which people are still doing. They can find non-alc that way. And then so I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, all the things. I think Denise has already, if you're listening to this, she's already put links in the captions and in all of the things. But Zero Proof Nation and Booze Free in DC are my websites. They have their Instagrams. My personal one is at We Are Sober. And I don't post as much on LinkedIn as I used to, but I still am active-ish on LinkedIn. I love connecting with other brands and tastemakers that way. Yeah, just keep your eyes and ears out for new things. I can't say exactly what or when, but I'm always working on something.
We shall watch this space with excitement and anticipation.
Well, it might be a
Laura,
while,
it's it's time for my final question that I ask everybody who comes on the show, because I believe in spreading the love across the lands for all of the amazing low, no, and light drinks that are out there and the people
yes.
who want to enjoy them. So the weather is turning, it's getting warmer. Despite any other things that might be going on, people are coming together to spend time with their friends and family and have a great time. And it is barbecue season is coming upon us. So
Yes.
let's imagine you're off to a wonderful barbecue with some wonderful friends, and you're bringing along some amazing low-no drinks to enjoy for the day. Now, of course, you're going to have a bottle of your All the Bitters Cherry Blast
Sure.
Fistus to make some lovely, lovely long drinks. But other than your own,
Yes.
what other drinks do you enjoy for a barbecue in the low-no space?
When I think of barbecue, I immediately think of beer. And I love NA beer right now. It's having a movement. I noticed Biro behind you. I had the pleasure and privilege of tasting some at the Mindful Drinking Fest, which is an annual fest in DC. I love Athletic, and I love that you can find them everywhere. So, and they sometimes have some pilot brews that are interesting to try. So if all else fails, I can grab a case of like what's my favorite? I like the Cerveza Atletica, and I like their limited pilot brews too. But brands that might not necessarily be everywhere or that people are just discovering. I absolutely love Go Brewing. They're out of Chicago, and they've grown quite a lot. They've got national, and I don't know if international distribution yet, but they've certainly got national now, and they've got some really great things, including sours. They do a lot of sours, so like raspberry, blueberry. They do IPAs really well. Um, I'm looking at my I'm looking at my my bar area right now. Oh yes, there's a brand out of Canada that just sent their sort of newer cans to me. They're One for the Road Brewing, and they have some exquisite NA beers that are low in calories too. So I'm loving them right now. I just had their stout and their Saskaberry blonde. Not together, but knowing me, I would mix everything together.
You could give it a try.
I'm also a huge spritz girl. I love spritzes, and so I love sort of like the direct replacement for like an Aperol spritz, for instance. But one of the interesting aperitivos that I've discovered that I'm loving and would make a spritz for anyone who asked is Wilderton Aperitivo Company's citrus aperitivo, and making a citrus spritz out of that. And it's incredible. I actually just reviewed it on my Substack. Oh, you can find me on Substack as well. Denise will have the link. I'm enjoying doing some reviews every now and then of products that I'm loving. I will tell people products that I don't like, but that's more of I don't want to like put anyone on blast for things that I don't like. But if I'm lukewarm about something, there's good parts. I want to be honest in my reviews.
I think so. Yeah, you have to be.
You have to be honest.
A
but
taste thing,
Yeah.
As long as I think when people ask, is this good or is this bad? You're like, well, for me personally, I don't like those flavors.
Exactly.
But somebody else might like it, and I don't
That's
think there's
exactly
anything wrong
it.
with that.
That's exactly it, because we all have unique taste buds, and we have different tastes. And I know that you and I have talked about like some of the things that you're more interested in versus others, and I think there's something for everyone, and some people gravitate towards more sugary things, some people gravitate towards more bitter things, some people like to try a bunch of everything. So there's certainly a lot. I would definitely bring more to the barbecue if there's still a minute or two for me to.
Yeah, go for it.
I think a sparkling wine would do really well at a barbecue. It's nice and refreshing. And I am loving a brand out of the UK called Bolle. Please tell me how to pronounce that. Bolle. Yeah, it's so interesting in that it's like twice fermented, and and I had it in a really interesting way at Mindful Drinking Fest. It was in a cocktail. So it was like a sparkling wine cocktail, but just a flute of that. So refreshing. That's a great sort of, cheers type celebratory beverage. It's very, very good. And then I think if I have friends that are watching what they drink and wanting something super low to no calorie and no sugar, there's a brand called Hoplark over here that is one of the first to sort of pioneer the hop water and hop tea movement, and they do a lot of really great pilot brews as well. One of their pilots right now is like a blood orange black decaf black tea. It's really good, and I love hop teas and hop waters. So I think that's a small sample of what I might bring with me. And I just have to say, I don't know if everyone agrees or disagrees, but I think stouts can be year round. So fight me on that. But it doesn't just have to be a winter beer. For me, it's year round. So, but I think for the Go Brewing one, I would bring their grapefruit IPA. It's very summery. It's so good. And I'll make sure to let you know what I mentioned so that you can pop those recs in the in the show notes.
Definitely, that's an amazing list. It's fantastic, and I love that you've covered both sides of the pond there, so everybody can try something.
Absolutely.
I'm really intrigued to find out more about hop waters. I think that they could be coming into
Yes.
a moment soon, and they're great if you're a beer lover, but you want to take away the alcohol and you want something that's
Yeah.
really refreshing. Then it's a fantastic new category that I think is going to do some really interesting stuff over the next couple of
Yeah,
years.
watch
So,
that space, because hop waters are also having a moment now.
and they're so healthy, so
They are.
healthy for
They
you.
are.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
I like them.
Laura, it has been fantastic speaking to you. You are a ball of energy. Your enthusiasm is tangible, and I think you've done some amazing work in helping to bring the low no movement to life to lots of people around the globe, and supporting them in their choices to drink less for whatever reason, for whatever length of time. So keep up the amazing work, and thank you for joining me today, my lovely.
Thank you, Denise. I love everything you're doing too. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I can't wait to connect with you.